Hey man, what's happening?
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. We had a little technical snafu there. I
Well,
was like,
that
what
was the
the hell was
weirdest
that?
thing, man.
Yeah, I want to say, I mean, if I had taken a handful of mushrooms or something, I think this would have made sense, but it definitely did not. I have no idea what the hell just happened.
No idea. We got a
Yeah,
new screen we've never seen before.
yeah, it's like being teleported into some alternate universe.
Weird stuff's
Anyway,
happening.
how are you, man?
I'm doing all right, man. We're
Yeah,
back from Vegas. I know you were in Costa Rica.
yeah, man. I have to tell you, I really don't have any idea what the fuck I'm doing here. Like, why am I,
Look, I wasn't even that into Vegas, but I'm like, not where I am most of the time isn't bad ever.
yeah, right. I'm like down there. I get down there, and I leave early on a Thursday, and I get down there, and we're just sort of poking around, and it's we're not in a rush to get anywhere, and
Yeah.
like we made it back, unpacked, went down, and like our routine day one is to always go to this one bar that's got the most outrageously mind-blowing sunsets ever.
Yeah.
And like tons of people go to this place because it's super like everybody loves it. It's fucking gorgeous, right? And
Yeah.
so I'm down there, I'm having a drink, like watching sunset. I'm like, man, 8 hours ago I was like at my desk, like doing like work, and now I'm
Grinding.
here. And then like I spent 5 days there just kind of like doing our thing. And I don't know, man. It's the amount of headspace I have now having come back is like preposterous that I don't like hold on to this. Like, I mean, when you go away, do you not think like when you come back, because it seems like you checked out in Vegas too. Like you kind of
Look, man, I was prepared the first 2 days for me to just be a shit show. Like I'm not even going to be functioning. Why? This is my first time I've like, in the cartoons when they go to stop and they just keep skidding. Like, I feel like that's what happens when I stop, and then eventually I hit a wall. So, I came back, same thing, man. And I banged out that next morning. I got up and I didn't go to clinic. I just like took the extra day because they moved our flight up. Knowing that if I didn't sleep the night before, I banged out so much work that I had sitting waiting for me. And I got it down so quickly, and it was like, nope, that's all right. Let's go. You weren't stressed about any of that.
Right. And so what I also did right before I left, I don't know, have you ever done tapping therapy where you're like,
So my office manager, Hank, she's certified in it. She actually does that in our office. Yeah.
So I did a session with someone, and like we were talking about frustrations and why we get frustrated. And a lot of my frustration comes from the fact that like I move at a pace where, if a task is presented, I say, okay, this is going to take me 8 minutes. Like I then leave exactly 8 minutes to do it. Now, what generally happens is that is actually a 20-minute task, you see.
Yeah.
Like that I have somehow come up with like, oh no, 8 is the right answer. And I now have something to do at minute 9. And then when I'm not done with this task at exactly 8, like I'm like, and I start getting, and this is entirely self-inflicted. But what was interesting is we did this tapping thing where she was basically just like, I am creating all of this, like, and you're just like tapping in that specific order. And I actually forget the order. I think it's like, what is it?
Oh, you can get a cheat sheet online. Yeah. It's interesting because they always go, oh, this is like acupuncture. And I'm like, yeah, but like if you did acupuncture with like a hand grenade, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not right on the point. It's in the area.
Yeah. And I think that what it is, and I don't know, I mean, I would love to hear how this translates, but what she was saying is like, you're basically hitting all of those meridians, like as you're,
and that's the thing, right? You don't have to be accurate if you're hitting like a whole area,
like
right?
an area.
Definitely hitting it, right? Above the eyebrows and under the
armpit.
Yeah,
it's like above the eyebrows. It's under here. It's right
like
here,
below the clavicle.
Yeah, and then it's breastbones, and then I think it's like side of head, and then it's top of head.
And
I'm sure there's varieties of this.
I guarantee you, and I like it because it's that the new buzzword that's been around forever, but I think it's just making another lap is psychosomatic disorders, where we have physical things in our body, right? You don't have to have this massive diagnosis But all of that, right? The number of people that come in and they're stressed out and then they get, their neck and shoulders get tight. That's like 99% of the population. You let that go unchecked and now they're getting temporal headaches. All right, you let that go unchecked and now they're getting jaw pain, right? But it's just a physical manifestation of their stress levels. And I think with tapping, what we're doing is when we hit those areas, we're breaking that cycle enough. Yeah, and with tapping, they do have a mantra that they kind of give you too. They probably don't call it a mantra, but you're repeating like I'm creating all of this, that kind of thing. You're letting yourself know that like, hey, this is okay for me not to carry, or this is okay for me to not be stuck in this, loop.
Which I thought was really interesting, because if you look at a lot of other, psychological healing modalities, right? A lot of them are drawing to a mantra or drawing to an outcome. Like, so I would have thought, for example, that this would have been like, I am super calm. I am the control. I am so calm that nothing bothers me, blah, blah, blah. In fact, it's the opposite. I am causing this problem. I am the only reason I cause this problem. I am not good enough because that, and you just keep doing this and you're and it's like the exact opposite. And when I asked about it, she was like, yeah, because what you're doing is you're basically 4 bits a second or 40 bits a minute, or is it 4 or 40 bits a minute that you can take in your brain, right? And versus 4 million bits of data you can take in on your body.
Yeah.
And she goes, and all we're doing is talking directly to your body. Your central nervous system it's like a walkie-talkie directly to the source. And I was like, well, that's pretty interesting. I've never done it. I'm actually thinking about like signing up for like a 6 session.
Yeah.
Like thing. It's a little spendy. I mean, it's a couple grand. Like it's
wow. I gotta tell Hank, she got to raise her prices.
Yeah. Well, what sheets cost? Maybe I'll try it out with her instead.
Not a couple of grand. I think 6 sessions will definitely be under $600. $700 at least.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. So definitely different.
This is.
I think she's like 2. Like
and that's not necessarily like. It also depends on like it's everything. It's the experience. It's what else are they doing? It's so that's not really an apples to apples, but it is something that like, dude, you can watch a YouTube video and there's a free chart online.
No, and it's super interesting. But like when you pair that, like I did that the day before I left.
Yeah.
And then I went from that session, which by the way worked essentially instantly. Like
that's great.
Was basically
like an Office Space kind of scenario, huh?
Which, by the way, if you know of a guy or a girl who can get me into an Office Space scenario, I'm fucking all in. Like, I mean,
we're gonna start interviewing hypnotists now.
Oh my fucking! Like, I'll tell you what, man. I thought about that on the way back from Costa Rica. I was like, I am like weirdly calm right now, like calmer than I've been in years.
Yeah.
Like, and nothing objectively different happened, right? But I think there was something with this like 1-2 punch of like the tapping thing. I think I'm no bullshit. I think that like uncorked some shit that like once it was out, it was out.
It's like it's like almost a purgative, right? Like I got it out, and it's going to take a while for that to resettle,
Like normally on a vacation, not gonna lie, I run headfirst into like an umbrella drink. My first mandate in any vacation is give me anything with rum in it, and the bartenders look at me confused. They're like, "What does that mean?" I'm like, "Take a glass
and put rum in it.
Put rum in it." And then let your imagination do the rest, right? Like you tell me what feels good to you, right? Like that, but let's start with the 2 mandatory ingredients. We have a glass and we've got rum. Please and then they look at me, they're like, how about it? And I'm like, I cut them off. I'm like, yes. Whatever you've got.
I love that. It's like, you could just be like, hey, anything that sounds like a Jimmy Buffett song, I'll drink that.
Yeah, I will drink that 100%. Right? Yeah. And, but yeah, so it got me kind of thinking about like, what are we, it's so basic, right? Like we wake up, we go to work, we raise families, we're social animals. We make a little love, we sleep, right? Those are the basic ingredients, right? I mean, it's sort of, and everybody's got versions of them. Not everybody does all of them, but like those are the at 50,000 foot options, as it were, right? Yeah. Like, and like most of the time, like that should just operate very fluidly, and yet we are constantly like derailed in this category. Right?
It's so hard to regulate, and I think you hit the nail on the head. We're basically still animals, but yet we have we developed this great civilization that we somehow decided we had to pay for. Right. And it's like, wait, we could all be like, no other species pays for food, and no other species pays for a house.
No, but other species will perish if they don't catch the food. So like,
that's very true. There's still work to be done. I'm just saying.
There's trade-offs. But like something like this, like, I mean, it's so basic. And look, maybe maybe the stars aligned and everything worked out. But like, honestly, this was one of the most effective treatments I've ever had. Right?
That's like, great. I'm glad to hear that, man.
In terms of just being like completely, I mean, I don't know. It's like my drive to do anything like sort of derailing, right? Like honestly, I haven't had a glass of wine in a week. Like you know what I mean? Like,
chill. That's great.
I'm like, I need to get this other thing done, and it's not like I need to, and there's stress. It's labor. It's like, oh, I need to get this other thing done, and this isn't serving that. So
I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it. Right. Like it's not.
I get that.
And I guess it's funny. I read an article today that said and it was one of these alarmist douchebags, which I don't personally love, but he did bring up a semi-valid point anyway, is that, one reason why fear mongering around AI is being allowed to fester is that AI truly would be the end of capitalism in his vantage point.
You know my feelings about that. Bring it on,
Well, so my point is exactly that, right? Like, so if this is our biggest fear, like that AI is going to end capitalism, well, then that's not a problem at all. Like,
but I mean, like, there's plenty of writers in a political space or philosophical space, however you want to frame it, that say like even things like racism. I mean, that root is to keep us separated and not united, right? Because if I can convince you who's working for me that you're just slightly better because you're the same color as me, but those guys over there, at least you're not them.
I'll one up that. I actually had a really interesting conversation about the root of racism one time, and it totally made sense. And at the same time, it made me absolutely realize immediately that we will never get past it. So the theory apparently, and I forget what the name of the theory is, but basically the idea is that racism isn't a racism against another color, height, hair color, whatever. It's that back when we were early humanoids, and then Neanderthals, and then us. Oftentimes, people that didn't look like you were probably not friends of yours.
I gotcha.
And you got a 50-50 shot that they're like the cool pull up a rock and hang out friends, or they're the beat you over the head with a rock
until you die.
Well,
that's interesting too, because even when we were Homo sapiens, there was still like Neanderthal were there. There was 5 other species on the planet with us that we know of, and we interbred with most of them.
And I heard that at one point there was 7, simultaneously.
There had to have been. I mean, we. And I think these are still Homo sapiens, but we still have pygmy tribes somewhere in the world.
Sure. And one of those 7 was this little pygmy, version of us that was like 4 feet tall. Like, and I'm like, oh, that's cool.
And then every once in a while they'll find like an 8-foot skeleton or a bunch of 8-foot skeletons in a grave in Scotland.
Yeah, you're like, where the fuck did that come from?
Where wait, we were actually, was that us? Like, I need answers.
Yeah. But like, imagine if we're just racist because we're, like built in, we just don't like people that aren't us because they're not.
Because they might kill us. Yeah.
They might kill me. And so like, but then that made me realize, I'm like, well, wait a minute. If that is true, then we're fucked because that's a literally DNA strand reality.
I would say there's probably... There's definitely some truth to that, but I would broaden that to anything like, right, we have the sticks and snakes kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, well, I've been conditioned or I've been told to be afraid of that, or that raises stress in me. And you're going to hear that 10,000 times more than you hear like a Good Samaritan story,
Oh yeah, no. And listen, I'm not. This isn't a proponent to
not
that
you
racist.
agree with it. It's just
Like, but I'm just saying, like, it doesn't. Look, it all goes back to something that you and I think, believe at our core, which is we're a fucking chemistry set.
Yeah.
Inside of a fucking baboon's body.
Yeah.
And the only difference is that we have to use your words. It's like we have to pay for this shit. Like that's it.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like, and somebody starts posting the logo for Skynet and that same thing. Like I was reading the comments and I was like, look, I don't know about you, but I'm fucking done with the Skynet argument. Like, okay, we all saw the fucking movie. We get it.
We would have killed ourselves much quicker than this.
Move the fuck on from Terminator, people. Like, can we?
Well, even if that happens, like a further Terminator from further in the future will come back and save us.
Right. And if it does happen, then we'll have our Sandra O'Connor or whatever the fuck her name was. You know what I mean? Like,
I feel like that was almost an Irish singer. Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
I like Sandra O'Connor though.
Yeah. Like that sounds like a Supreme Court justice. And a singer and what you call it? The winner of America's Got Talent.
Yeah.
Like it's all wrapped in one.
Watch, she's probably also another famous person that we just don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I don't forget what the hell got us on this topic, but but I guess, I know. We started, I get this, the internet, man, I fucking love the internet. I mean, it's, so looking around in my due course of travels, and I don't know where I found this site. Right.
Yeah.
And it's actually like one of the best examples of almost everything we've ever talked about on this show wrapped into one website. And it's funny because like when you take it at face value, most of the stuff is founded in stuff that we can literally prove. But the way they present it is basically extreme marketing. You know what I mean? Like,
man, you showed me this site and I'm like, nope, this is all clickbait immediately, but it is
100% clickbait. But here's the funny part about this. It's clickbait designed specifically for health nut weirdos like you and me. And it preys on the thing that we keep saying is like biohacking. I know you hate this term and I don't disagree, but I've yet to figure out a replacement. But
I mean, neither have I. I actually used it today when somebody asked me a question.
But like the community that wants to optimize themselves largely probably wants to do it because they're not so under the surface, terrified of dying. Right. And like, so, what better way to not die than be healthy, right? Like, I mean, that's sort of, and this kind of site preys on that exact problem with these people.
So I just checked out the author's bio, and I'm not impressed.
Well, no. Well, first of all, if you look at the web,
am I jumping the gun?
No. If you look at the website layout, this is clearly done by like someone who has very little life experience of any kind, because like
it looks like it's from the early days of Google.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly that would be insulting the early days of Google. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. This is pretty bad. But I did want to talk about one article that I found in here because I think it's Now keep in mind, I have yet to unsubscribe from this out of sheer like train wreck mentality.
Oh,
it's so bad, but it's so bad that I have to watch it. It's so bad. Like,
yeah, I get that. I get that.
Like there was one video about, and I honestly, like, I got very close to canceling my day to like finish it, but it's like one of these videos that has no play or pause button. So like it could be another 5 minutes, could be another 8 hours. Like I don't fucking know.
There's no time. There's nothing.
There's no time. And like the funny part is
scrolling across the bottom.
I had already kept it going in the background for like 15 minutes and it was showing no signs of stopping. And I'm like sitting there going, how long is this thing? Remember that weirdo video we watched on Cannabis? Yeah. And we were like, yeah, imagine that where you're just like, except there's somebody talking like fairly serious. Well, I guess, okay. It's very much exactly like that video. And you're like, is this a 1 hour movie? Is this an 8 hour movie? Cause right now it's anybody's guess. Like,
especially when it's just rambling, you know?
And it's just rambling. But this guy was talking about an electromagnetic pulse that can be fired from space that Russia had weaponized and was about to unleash hell on the United States.
This is from this website.
It is from this website.
On how to get six-pack abs.
Well, so that's the funny thing. It is.
Oh fuck!
It is a weird.
I'm gonna subscribe now.
Yeah, like it's a weird. I have no idea how that happens.
Look, man. We've talked about biases. We've talked about all this before, man. I really feel like there's a certain crazy train where there's like a Venn diagram of biohackers and then like flat earthers and and there's
shallow
let's say there's quite a bit of overlap there, and it's like you guys looked at a study? No, but this guy that I follow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's an eclectic bag of stuff. Let's put it that way. But like one, it piqued my interest, this thing about the carnivore diet, right? And and what was interesting about it is that the title, just kind of level set here, right? The meat diet, better than vegetarian for fat loss, diabetes, autoimmune, digestion, and more. Now, right out of the gate, I'm actually intrigued, but I think it's an intriguing title because like in my brain, a more protein-rich, lean protein-rich diet is likely going to be amazing for all of those things.
Yeah, right? There is research on
like
all
it
of
makes
that.
sense right out of the gate. I'm like, okay, well, you got me. I'll bite. Let's see where this train takes me, right? Like because it's not wrong, right? Like, but I know it's clickbait. Like, I mean, we see the train coming. I know.
You it's definitely. And just poking around, the number of links to sell a book too, you know?
Oh no, it's all about selling. And I mean, but that's why I said I love the internet. People can make money all kinds of batshit crazy
weird,
ways.
crazy ways. Yeah.
I talked to somebody today, a client who took a month off, right? And while they were gone with their child in Europe, bouncing around, they made $250,000 in closed business. Not actually going to work. And I said, holy crap, that's really amazing. And they were like, well, yeah, but everything I do is automated. And then they started walking me through the process. And I was like, wow, this took a long time to set up. But now that you've set it up, there's nothing left to do.
Right? Money,
like yeah, you just have to step and repeat. And that's how I feel about these guys, right? Like, these things are fairly easy to stand up. And I fall for it because it's not wrong. And I'm infinitely fascinated at the breadth of commentary available for these things. And most importantly, how these things are interpreted, right? Because my opinion on, and the thing that clicks in my brain around meat diet and all of those things, when you look at fat loss, diabetes, autoimmune, digestion, what are the problems of all those? Inflammation, straight up, Like every one of those is an inflammation disease, right? And eating a bunch of grass-fed steaks is fucking awesome for inflammation. Like you're not
as long as you don't like cover it with other stuff and eat it with like, baked potatoes and all.
I'm talking about just the steak. I'm not
just
talking
the steak. No, I get you. But like what I was saying, I think before we had the technical issue, was while yes, there's some research on that. Like you also can't ignore. And I don't have a dog in this fight. I eat like shit. You can't ignore the large volume of vegetarian research, right? And how positive that is
totally
for similar things.
No, and I think that this kind of like really drives to why I find this interesting, because like this guy's interpretation of this is the gist of the article is basically like, listen, don't believe all the people in the media that tell you that the vegetarian diet's the only way to be healthy, because that's objectively
only way I would agree with that. The phrase "only way" that
because he said
better. That's debatable.
So it's not debatable if you look at like you touched on it with Rogan, right? He talks about Joe Rogan losing, and just so I don't, best he's ever felt, losing 12 pounds of body fat, losing love handles he couldn't get rid of previously. He reported energy was perfectly stable for the month that he ate carnivore. He felt so good eating all meat that he did it again for 30 days in the following January and reported similar results. Now,
yeah, and he probably did, but also he didn't stop taking supplements. I'm wondering if there's some TRT in there. There's I don't think, I'm not arguing with the message of, look, you want to try carnivore for a month. That sounds like not a bad thing for most people. But, like, I don't think that was his only thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like he's sitting on the couch just eating steaks.
And I think that's sort of one of those things you got to be careful with. Now,
I think that's the clickbaitiness of this.
Correct. And that was kind of where
part of this. Yeah.
And that's kind of where I was going, right? Like his interpretation of this, I mean, the facts he states are not inaccurate, but his interpretation of this is basically, I don't want to say an anti-vegetarian diet, but it is definitely hey, when you look at these things, and I've actually been seeing a lot of this lately. I don't know why spinach is getting such a bad name, but there's been a lot of like articles recently about the oxalate levels in spinach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, right. And I shake my dude. Listen, I've shook my head every time I read those articles.
BioLane did a whole thing on that on his Instagram. And it's like, look, these are things we've been eating for thousands of years. Yes, if you're an insect, you're not going to like it. But
I mean,
dose makes the poison kind of thing. Is it going to possibly inflame you a little? Yeah, possibly. And there's going to be certain people that are more sensitive to it too.
Right. So I guess my question there is like, I not my question, but I guess my observation there is that, I knew a guy, I took him home from an event one time with a bunch of us. It was him and his wife in the back seat and Brian and I in the front seat, actually. Right. And he's like, oh, I've been on a carnivore diet for 5 years. And I was like, I'm not gonna lie, my first reaction internally, I didn't externalize this, but I was like, fuck, what? That's bananas.
5 years sounds bananas. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds fucking crazy. But then I like immediately thought to I self-corrected and I was like, well, there's a whole Eskimo tribe somewhere that's never eaten vegetables. Iceland doesn't have a vegetable in sight. I mean, that place is nothing but, I mean, the hotels do and stuff, but like, look, fish, meat, that's
if you're a hunter in a tundra climate, that's what you're having.
And those people are fine. Right.
Yeah.
And then, but then you get into like the China study and how they studied like all those different people, and some people interpret that study to be like, hey, look, these people in China were bred for tens of thousands of years to be one way, and like that doesn't mean that an Inuit is bred the same way. And I think that if you look at books like Eat Right for Your Type, which is a blood type alignment book,
and still like I remember that book being so huge, and it's like I don't know if the science still holds up today.
Well, it's one of those. So I tried that for a couple minutes as well, and honestly, like I did feel good. Now, how much of this is placebo?
Well,
we know most of it, probably, right? But like the thing that made sense about that headline for me is when I go to a more protein-based diet, I automatically stop leaning in on carbs because
Did you just thumbs up? Did you just?
Yeah, yeah, it's this new Apple filter.
Oh,
yeah.
You're doing it through an Apple. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, because it does it on my if I FaceTime somebody.
Yeah. It's weird. All of a sudden,
so you can do the heart and everything too.
We don't know how to control it. Wait, is there a heart thing? Holy shit! Hold on a second. Let me just.
And like the Rock shoots fireworks. I tried
doing that. It didn't do anything. Look, here's a heart. I'm even saying heart.
Well, I think you got to do it like just two. Like I don't know how the kids are doing it.
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, and it's like, do I have to go this way? I don't know. I can never get it to, I don't know how to make it work.
It just came up, man. That's crazy.
It literally started yesterday. Like I think an update last night ran.
I updated the kids were like, Dad, you got to update the iOS, right? Of course they'd done it. Like the second it came out.
Well, I do.
And they're like, check this out. Let's FaceTime each other.
Yeah. And you're like, wow, that's pretty sweet. Yeah. I'll read the instruction manual at some point. But it's not gonna,
wow, that's totally side railed us. But
yeah. So anyway, when I lean in on that and I go hardcore like protein, my body starts craving carbohydrates a lot less, like an imbalance difference less, right? So to your point, I get a steak on the plate and like my brain is like, and it's next to a bacon, cheddar, broccoli, cheese, and sour cream baked potato. I'm like,
that sounds amazing right now.
It sounds amazing, but when I'm looking at that steak, like my brain just shuts that shit off. Like I'm like, nope,
that's great.
I don't want anything to do with that. And so like for me, I literally feel less puffy if I do that for even 48 hours. And so like when somebody's like, hey, meat diet's better for, a bunch of shit that is inflammatory based. I'm like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
It more than likely you're not going to be allergic to most animal proteins. I mean, some people are, but within that, if that's telling your body, hey, this is all fuel.
Yeah. Now, so here's where it kind of turns for me a little bit, right? Like, so macro, I understand it, but when we start getting into the weeds, when he gets to the autoimmune side, he calls out a bunch of stuff that we've heard a million times. And I don't know that I necessarily think that there's a lot of evidence there. Number one, nightshades. Like why should we avoid a vegetarian diet? Right?
It is because those specific vegetables do have inflammatory processes in them.
Sure.
But
and he calls
it's a
out
staple of Italian food. It's like.
He calls out the usual suspects, right? So it's like
wheat, gluten, dairy.
Yeah, exactly. So he's like gluten containing grains, right? There's one. Beans, high in lectins, which let's put a pin in that. I want to come back to that.
And when you mix,
right. And oxalates from leafy greens and other problematic.
He's not saying anything that there isn't some studies around, but like once again, it's that echo chamber thing. He's just
totally. And more importantly, like I looked into the bean thing and that's why I want to come back to this.
That's a confusing argument, man.
When paleo popped onto the scene and everyone was like, these fucking paleo Nazis online that were like, yo, can't even look at a can of beans. It'll fuck you up. And I'm like, all right, look. So I did a fairly deep dive on that. And I was like, and it turns out that so much of that basis is, in my opinion, and again, I want to hear you argue me because I know you know a lot about this too. But like they said, yeah, there are lectins in there, but guess what? If you look at indigenous people or, Central and South American people where beans is like they invented this shit, basically, they don't even consider cooking it without soaking it overnight, and soaking it gets rid of all of that shit.
Yeah.
Right. So so all of a sudden it's like, okay, if I were to eat a raw black bean, which would give me all kinds of GI problems, let alone a fucking wicked stomach ache for eating a bunch of raw black beans, that's probably not good. On the other side of that coin too, canning the beans also gets rid of the entire thing.
You keep throwing up the thumbs up.
I know, the fucking thumbs up. Yeah. Canning the beans also gets rid of the lectins and all of the deleterious parts that they're talking about. So when I hear these douchebags like yammering on about like, you know, looking at a can of beans on the paleo diet and being wrong, and then God help you if you're in my presence and you say it's not ancestral, I will fucking rip your arm off and beat you senseless.
Our ancestors were eating shit in the woods. You know, it's like they were just like, whatever is going to get food in my hole and not kill me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, this argument is ridiculous.
It is.
It is absurd.
Well, you know,
I don't get like the beans thing. And then we just talked about the oxalates. It's like, okay, so like one study said that if you ate a wheelbarrow full of spinach, well, you get
the other argument with the spinach. You got a lot of good stuff going on here. The other argument with the spinach is that it has more iron than the same portion of meat.
Wow.
And there is some truth. There's higher iron levels. The problem is we don't absorb iron well. Right. Unless it's bound to a heme group, which is found in hemoglobin, blood. We're not big blood drinkers, but in myoglobin as well, which is in the muscle. So like when you get a steak and it's been sitting out and it gets like, it's not blood, but it's reddish.
Sure.
That's myoglobin, which is a type of hemoglobin, but it's in the muscle cells themselves. And within that, like that's absorbed more readily than eating a field full of spinach. And I'm not arguing against eating the spinach. I'm just saying that you're not getting the same amount of iron that you're telling yourself.
But you're also not getting the in order for, like, when we say toxic, right?
Yeah.
Like oxalates are toxic. Like an educated person should think it's going to really fuck me up. Like the toxic should imply worst case
don't eat ever. Like this is not food.
Yeah. What they say though is like too much oxalates could give you a kidney stone. And I'm like, okay, well, listen, that sounds inconvenient. Like, and
you're probably going to work the next day
and probably very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you're not even going to have a copay for this situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're not.
And once again, what's the dose?
Right. And do I have to eat a wheelbarrow?
Spinach and kale a couple of times a week? Or is
this? God, now that you're subscribed to this site, give it a minute. You'll have 12 articles about why you should never eat kale. That's a whole nother ball of wax. I mean, I don't want to spoil the surprise.
And not that like, we have a liver, we have kidneys, we have ways to get things out of our system because we naturally detox. And I'm not trying to say go ahead and pollute the shit out of yourself, but at the same time, it almost feels like that's a fail-safe. So when we do eat certain things, we're okay.
Sure.
And I'm not here like let's have fried Twinkies. Although actually sounds pretty good right
now. Yeah. But like, you know what? Is it so? Let's take Twinkies as a good example, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have studies to prove Twinkies are good or bad.
There's probably some that they're bad.
Listen, I'm sure there's plenty. But just like the little trick that has been played on us for years and every other thing about health, have you ever studied a Twinkie, or have you studied the constituent parts of a Twinkie?
And you're saying the Twinkie
and
as
do
a whole
meta-analysis.
Has a different
right. Well, no, we know that logically it probably doesn't. If anything, it's worse. But my point is like, I don't know the answer to this, but like statistically, it's more likely that a Twinkie study does not exist and that all of the constituent parts of a Twinkie have studies that may or may not be valid. And then all they do is a meta-analysis of those and derive another study that phantomly describes how a Twinkie reacts metabolically in the human body, which let's just agree is hearsay. Like, I mean, but here's the thing. It doesn't even matter, because maybe it's just because I've looked at enough of this data over the years. Maybe it's just because I'm more in touch with my inner human hunter-gatherer? I don't really know. But no part, not the look, the smell, the taste of a Twinkie makes my body think this is good for me. Like none of it.
You're
like,
saying it wasn't part of your ancestral diet?
It was sure for certain, but I'll tell you what, if you threw a box of Twinkies in front of a Neanderthal, they would fucking go to town on that shit. Are you serious?
They totally would.
They would crush that box of Twinkies. And like, that would be...
Are they still even making Twinkies anymore? I heard...
Yeah, there was a minute where they quit, and I went on eBay just to see how dumb people were, because I was like...
They were that dumb.
They were $1,000 a box.
Jesus Christ.
That is hilarious.
So Faith in Humanity Restored, I did search Twinkie on PubMed.
Yes.
No results.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because like, look, nobody, and I think the only reason we have studies on cigarettes is because there was a real fiduciary like outcome there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Treating people with smoking related illnesses was way more profitable than selling them cigarettes in the first place. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like way more profitable. And so there was a real motivator there, right? Like they could make a ton of money. Oh, speaking of that, do you know, is this true? Somebody told me today that US is one of only 2 countries in the world that allows pharma companies to do TV commercials.
Makes sense because, growing up, we always had the cigarette commercials. And then one day there was a law that passed and there you were gone.
Right. But I guess
it absolutely makes sense, because why should I be asking my doctor if a certain drug is good for me? Sure. Now, maybe you're doing your own research, but if you're doing it because a commercial told you.
Right. Unlikely. Yeah,
unlikely is very true.
But my point is how many times have you ever gone? I mean, most of those commercials that are online, you never see a TV commercial for like, hey, we've got this great drug that's going to like totally supercharge your Krebs cycle. It's
never about promoting wellness.
Yeah.
But then you leave it to the supplement companies making outlandish claims and not even saying whether or not they are, doing third-party testing to make sure that compound is actually in there.
Well,
they advertise all the time, right? I mean,
but I guess like it's funny because if you think about it, like if I didn't have a doctor, if I didn't have an Ask Your Doctor commercial, I wouldn't have an Ask Your Doctor mentality, which we all now have. Let's be honest. And I think my little foofy doctor is going to eventually cut me loose one day, because I do ask a lot of questions, because I'm like, I'm asking my doctor, like, and like 9 out of 10 times he's like, I don't really you're asking me a very
I feel bad because I normally end up texting a friend of mine, and we got to have her on the show at some point. But hey, will this kill me?
Yeah, no? Right.
Can you give it to me?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I started taking chromium picoline.
Yeah. How's that been going?
It's great, and taking berberine at the same time. I take both of the thorns, and I just finished month 1, so I'm moving into month 2. And
cool.
Like, I am curious. I cannot find a good answer, and not surprisingly, no study exists that compares like what happens when you mix chromium and berberine. And I guess they're both sort of inert enough where I'm fairly convinced nothing is going to happen. But I am curious, like, is there a force multiplier effect because they both kind of operate in similar playgrounds? Mm-hmm. Is there a negating effect because one operates on a slightly different pathway than the other one? Like, I don't know enough about it. So every time I find a new AI tool, of which it's like every other day at this point, the first thing I ask is, what happens if you take chromium picolinate and berberine? And like, I got an encyclopedic answer today on one of them.
That's great.
But here's the thing: when I look through it, it's not really like an encyclopedic knowledge that I trust, because I don't know what the source data is for the AI. And so, I mean,
it could be literally supplement company websites.
It could totally be, right? And And like, you know, I think we've talked about the writer's strike before, and I'm actually like sort of on the fence about that topic as a whole. As a creator, I have one vision, and as a person who believes that knowledge will make us better, I have a different take on it, right? And so the way I look at it is now, and the way I guess, have changed my thought pattern on it is, if there was a tool where I could upload every book ever written and then ask a question based on fiction, every fiction book ever written, right? And can say, what do humans fundamentally, what's their biggest fear? Like, that could be actually deduced from
through fiction. Yeah. And through fiction. Yeah. I don't think you're wrong there, because that's where we sometimes tell our inner story. If it's able to nuance, you know, oh, this doesn't mean, you know, maybe this space, you know, the sci-fi adventure, it means this about the human condition.
Now, if you were to take every nonfiction book and put it into a similar blender, then you could literally ask it any question you wanted. And like, so on one side, I'm like empathetic to the writers, because they're like, you're using my work for something that I'm not getting paid for. And that sucks. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if I could do that with every study ever made, if I could put all of WebMD, all of JAMA, all of PubMed, all of any website that does anything, any organization or group that publishes papers, there's really no question we couldn't answer right now, today.
Yeah.
Like, if that existed today, it would be like the biggest magic 8 ball ever, right? Like, you're just like, how do I cure?
Tell me this.
Right. Because like, I don't think we have, I think we have the answer to all of our questions. It's just hasn't been connected with the ingredients yet, right? Like, it's not, remember what we said before is like, you know, everything that exists that is required to build a cell phone has been on the planet since before the dinosaurs.
Like, since the planet was the planet, everything we've done was a material we've gotten here.
Right. We haven't picked up any extraterrestrial stuff that we're aware of, right? And
not that they're telling us about.
Not that they're telling us about, right?
Although I did see Blink 182, and Tom was very happy that there are aliens. A lot of shirts that said Tom was right at that concert.
That's
I thought
hilarious.
They were talking about me for a minute. They weren't.
Yeah, and you realize that they probably weren't. But yeah, so I don't know. It's just like, I once again, I think that the psychology of these things is really super fascinating, because a lot of people are going to read this, and it's a photocopy of a photocopy, right? Like, the people are going to, like, a lot of people are going to walk away from this telling all their friends that, like, dude, you got to stop eating spinach, like, right now. Like, shit is killing you. Like, no, at worst, it's going to give you a kidney stone. So it's
a lot of spinach.
And you'd have to eat your neighbor's house full of spinach. So like, let's just
daily for a few months.
Keep this into perspective here, people.
Yeah.
I actually called a client out for that today. Actually, like a similar thing. He sent this snarky email about, like, in the world's most common monitor resolution, you'd think you guys would be able to solve this. And I was like, oh no.
Oh,
like, so I sent him the W3C link on the latest browser resolution statistics. And I was like, actually, that browser is 18% of the worldwide traffic, and 47% of the worldwide traffic uses a higher resolution of some kind than that. And that heavily favors monitors outside of the US, because it was a lower resolution, and cheaper resolution monitors are more popular in places you can't afford fancy 4K, 8K, whatever monitors. And their company blocks foreign IP addresses. So like, there's no, you physically can't use any data from another country. And it was like such a bitch slap that I felt like kind of bad about it. Like it was so aggressive. Like I actually felt bad after I brought it up. But he walked off that cliff real fast when I was like, here is data, motherfucker. Don't get passive aggressive douchebag with me because I will bitch slap your ass with knowledge like right here, right now. And then you fucking fight me. I dare you on the validity of this, because this is coming from literally the source. So I don't know. Maybe you want to
walk that one back a little bit. Yeah.
Maybe you should fact check your shit before you come at me like a freight train. Anyway, I digress. What are you getting into, man?
Yo, man, how's this book? We're almost there. We're almost there. I sent you the advanced reader copy.
You know what you're getting very soon? A brand new shiny forward. It's almost done.
Awesome, man. That's great. I really appreciate that.
Here's my question. I got to ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
My forward's kind of corny. Are you okay with that? Like,
look, dude.
Can you edit it? Like, can you just tell me if it sucks?
Did you read the book?
Would you be super like candid with me and be like, Hampton, I can't use this fucking thing. I'm not gonna.
I promise I will, but I'm sure it's gonna be perfect however it comes out, because I mean, I asked a bunch of friends for different things on this book because and they're people I have some connection to that might help, right? I have a friend who's a PA, and her partner is an MD, and the two of them, I asked them because they're doing some really cool thing that hasn't hit yet, and I feel like all of us are circling around these things that are like, right at the edge, and let's all do this. And then of course, Joe McClinsky, I'm going to ask him to write, a little back of the cover blurb. Because why the hell wouldn't I? And he did. He's like, I'll have it to you Monday. And I was like, that's awesome. But yeah, I'm excited because I think it's, at the end of the day, we do this, and I do, my clinic and all this other shit because I want to help people.
Sure.
And, if you can give somebody a bit of knowledge and you can turn them loose to be able to use that, that's what I think the mission is, for me. So,
and it's interesting that you phrased it like that, though, because I feel like a lot of people in our age bracket are not so slowly turning towards this notion of helping is better, right?
It is amazing to see that happening, because I think, when we talk about us Gen Xers, and we're late Gen Xers, Zennials, if you will. We were the ones that were like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, right? That was us. So it becomes like well, then what are we here for if we're not here for that? And we're watching the kids who are now like pushing 40 themselves coming up behind us, and some of the shit that we dealt with and we had when we were growing up is just not in their vocabulary. I mean, we talked about like how normal it is that LGBTQ people are in the same cliques as cis people. And it's like, well, that's great, right? The kids don't, that is one layer of that horrible onion gone. And
it's gone. Like Mike, I've told you before about my son was trying to explain who somebody was, and it was like the only black kid.
I can't call him the black kid, and I'm like, no, you can. You're not saying anything bad.
Well, no, he didn't even. It wasn't even like I can't say the black kid. It was
it didn't register.
It didn't even hit his radar. Like it was like not even on there, and I was like, that's awesome. Like that we're at that place. I was a little annoyed that he couldn't have used after like 16 tries of like after 16 tries of being like, every other thing that I don't know, because I don't go to school with this kid because I'm not a kid and I'm not in school.
Yeah.
Anyway. But it is funny. Everybody's sort of getting into this helping vibe, and I think it is pretty cool. And if that goes to its best case conclusion, then we're going to be just fine. Right.
You got to have that hope too, right? You can't, you mentioned this with the AI, right? If we're doom and gloom all the time, then what's the fucking point?
Right.
Like everybody gets a gun mailed to their house, one bullet in. It's like, so let's just do it now.
And like the funny thing is like one of these guys that I was talking about was like AI wasn't created, it was discovered. And like I was like, that's mind blowing. Like you think about that.
That is actually
Like, it wasn't created, it was discovered, which actually implies that it's been there all along. And going back to that, everything we've ever needed to build a cell phone's been here all along. This all kind of checks together, right? And like, I don't know, like, look, humans are a crude AI, and we are where we are. There is a lot about us that sucks, and there's a lot about us that's amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm a real big proponent, by the way, in this idea that you've got, like, you're only wired, like, us dum-dums are only wired, this Dunbar number idea, right? Like, that you're only wired, and I've heard it as high as 280, but I think like mid 100s is like kind of where it shakes out. But we're not wired to like process data past a couple hundred people at most, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you're looking at the war in Hamas, the war in Ukraine, like, these are terrible stories that could be overwhelming for a lot of people. And it's like, not that it's not overwhelming for me, but it's overwhelming because you are already dealing with all of your own life problems, your whole, your kids' high school problems, your kids' middle school problems, your friend's social circle problems, your work problems, right? Your workplace problems, your client place problems. Before you even talk about Hamas or Ukraine,
you're only 2 layers out. And you're already past that. Yeah, like that processing power,
right? You can't. Yeah, you're at full tilt just processing what's in your line of sight. You can't possibly be like expected to coherently process.
Yeah, and we say, we see that a lot, and I'm guilty of it too. Where it's like, how can you not care? And it's like literally, there's no
right.
There's no
I'm
more
not
room.
Saying I don't care.
I'm at capacity. Yes, that sounds horrible, but I'm over here with this fire.
And I've got 80 fires of my own. And granted, these are definitely in the scheme of things. If I wasn't
not an issue. Yeah.
If I wasn't me and I was just looking at problems on index cards and I had to put war in Hamas or some, middle-aged dude from Baltimore, problems of whatever, it's clearly going to be Hamas. But like, the problem is that's easy to do when you're not in the mix of it, right? Like, who cares passionately about all the shit going on? Anybody who lives in Gaza or Israel or any of those surrounding areas.
That is their number one.
Like, that is what and that makes absolute sense. I got it. My version of the you don't care thing was around female clitoral mutilation in these African countries.
Okay. Once again,
horrifying, but like,
and that's not, how's that actionable for you too?
Right.
That's
like,
the other thing. Like,
there's nothing I can do about
I don't want that to happen.
Right. But I also have 87 fires of my own to put out. And like, look, sometimes you can pick up a mantle on some of these things, but most of the time you can't, because like, if you picked up a mantle on everything that was important in the world, you wouldn't be able to breathe. You'd have so much, like, it's like, so anyway, again, digress, but
yeah, man.
But you're excited. That's exciting, man. Super big into the book. I have not read the whole thing yet, but I am plugging away at it as I'm writing this.
That's all right. I appreciate it, man. It's meant to be down and dirty.
It's quick. It's super easy, and it's this show and a book basically without any of the swear words or liquor or weed. Like, it's
those got edited out in the first one.
Right.
There was some comments, and they're like, you're using your doctorate title. You know that? Like,
yeah,
maybe this one, get rid of that. Can you word this that way instead?
Right.
Fucking.
It's funny. I listened to some clip of Huberman the other day, and it's like, I had one of those moments where I was like, this guy's drank the Kool-Aid already. But where he was like talking about cannabinoids, right? And he's like, I don't know what this is like. I'm like, the fuck you don't. Stop it. You're a PhD student in neuroscience. Like, you've definitely smoked weed. Don't be an idiot. Like, don't, like, stop.
God, that's so crazy.
Yeah, just stop.
What are you're trying to stay virginal for your marriage? What the fuck?
Yeah, no. Like, and then he copped to doing LSD in high school. Yeah, he copped to doing LSD.
If he did LSD in high school, he definitely did marijuana.
Oh, fucking yeah, dude, it's all bullshit. Come on.
He probably snorted so much pot.
But he was like, it wasn't good. I'm like, you're lying. You're just not telling the truth. Like, I don't know a single person that's taken LSD that it wasn't like at a recreational dose. It wasn't like that was literally the best 12 hours of my life. Like, I don't know anybody that has ever said that. Like, I know,
you know, like maybe he had a bad trip though. Maybe the first trip was a bad one and that was it. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah. I don't know. Agree to disagree. I guess.
I'm just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. You know.
I'm like, it's funny that group of like, I call them the Apple podcasters, right? The people that need to be like, look, there's no secret, man. If you do good in Apple, you make a ton of money, right? Like, and because it's a huge audience, great, makes all the sense in the world. Except you have to be like super G, right? Like, you know, it's not, you know, they have like real tight boundaries on that, and like that's just playing into that boundary. I'm like, dude, look, you're friends with like Tim Ferriss, who's the largest philanthropic donor in psychedelic history. You're on the Tim Ferriss show. You're friends with him. Like, you have a PhD in neuroscience or whatever the fuck his actual PhD is in, but it's brain related. I'm like, I don't know anybody in that field, and I only know a handful of people in those fields, but they all are very heavily
doing drugs.
They are very familiar with LSD and mushrooms and marijuana, and you know what I mean. Like, these are not. I mean, the
number of people that claimed, you know, success through drug use.
That's crazy. So,
you know, Fat Mike from NoFX wrote I know we got to wrap up, man. He wrote a musical called Home Street Home. And there's one song in it called Higher Achievers. And it literally is just listing a bunch of famous inventors, poets, you know, writers, and Carl Sagan. And they're like, the drugs they were on. Like, it is a great song.
Yeah, love it.
But anyway, man, what are you getting into? Because I feel like we're digressing.
I'm writing a forward, and I'm getting into tapping. The tapping thing.
Tapping, do it, man.
I gotta free up some space mentally, because I got to get this book back on the table. Not purely motivated by you, but not influenced by you either. Like, I'm like, I got to get this thing out the door. Like, and in order to do that, I got to let go of a couple things. And so far this thing has moved the needle more than anything else. So I'm awesome. Intrigued by this thing to the point of like, okay, let's take a beat and see what happens.
I can't wait, man.
So
can't wait.
I'll keep you posted.
Got it.
All right, man.
All right, talk to you soon.
You bet.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.